What's up, everyone, and welcome to the Corporate Bartender. Have you ever had a leader who wasn't like you? You know, you just didn't vibe and work was harder than it needed to be. Have you ever been that leader? If either of those apply, you're in the right spot. We've got Kelly McDonald on the show today. Don't know Kelly? Don't worry about it. We've got you covered. She's a CEO, a sought-after keynote speaker, and the author of 4 best-selling books on customer experience, marketing, and leadership. She's known as the Not Like You Girl, as all of her books are written from this perspective. Today, we're going to get into the book called How to Work With and Lead People Not Like You. Tons of good stuff in here. It was an amazing conversation, and I think you're going to dig it. So buckle up, TCBers, grab your favorite cocktail, and let's get right on into it with Kelly McDonald on today's TCB.
Welcome to SkyTeam's The Corporate Bartender, where we gather some of the best HR and people leaders to discuss what's happening on the people side of business. Now pull up a stool, belly up to the bar, and join us for The Corporate Bartender.
Welcome, everybody. It's Wednesday, and you know what that means. It's Corporate Bartender Day, your favorite day and mine. Today is a fun day. We've got a guest. She's the person that I like to say that you do not recognize in your little Brady Bunch Squares view. Her name is Kelly McDonald, and she is an acclaimed speaker who specializes in consumer trends and changing demographics. She's the president of McDonald Marketing. She's authored 4 best-selling books, and we're going to ask her why on earth she did such a thing. She talks about leadership and marketing, and she's got a book that I'm going to shine the light on here in a minute, but it's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to getting into this conversation. And I want to ask her some questions about her nickname and how she got here. There's a lot of good stuff. But before we get into the conversation, a little housekeeping. You know, the travel gods, they speak. We have some dark days ahead. Next week, the 12th of February, we will be dark. Ruby and I will be in what appears to be the snowy city of Boston, Massachusetts next week, doing some client work. But then we'll be back with the guest on the 26th of February. Linda Ugolo will be here, and she is the author of Delight in the Limelight. And she's all about public speaking and stepping into your brand and owning that. And then we've got a return guest, a boomerang guest on the 5th of March. It's Robin Bolton, and she's written a book called Unlocking Innovation, a leader's guide for turning bold ideas into tangible results. That is going to be a fun one because we had Robin on here before, and you can kind of see it in her picture here. The on the side of her head there, the bottom half of her little bob is blue. She has a big blue side of her hair now. It's awesome. She's super fun. But today, it's all about Kelly. And as I mentioned, speaker, CEO, she's done a lot of keynote speaking. We were talking in the pre-show about one particular title that she keynotes on about 60 times a year. So I've got questions about that. But the book that I wanted to shine the light on is the one that you see on the screen here. It's called How to Work With and Lead People Not Like You. Look, she's holding it up right there. There it goes. Practical solutions for today's diverse workplace. Now, you know what we do here, and we did not warn her in the pre-show, but Kelly, we dance everybody onto the show. So let's give Kelly a big, warm TCB welcome, shall we? Oh, look at, there it goes. She's gone full Pulp Fiction, everybody, right out of the gates. Right out of the gate. Kelly, welcome.
Goes well.
Welcome to the show. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, we always like to start by learning a little bit about you and how you got here, because I imagine that when you were a teeny tiny baby, you did not say, I will be an expert on marketing, consumer experience, and how to treat people in all sorts of situations that are not like you. Tell us a little bit about your journey. How did you get here, and what did you want to be when you were that wee child?
Oh, when I was a wee child, I wanted to be an actress. I thought that would be really cool. So that didn't happen.
Keynote speaker, actress. It's almost the same.
At some point, there's a stage, right? You know. So anyway, that didn't materialize. So real quick, because I do think it's germane, is I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, but not in the city. I grew up in a very, very wealthy white suburb to the north of Milwaukee called Whitefish Bay. And the joke then and sadly still now is that they call it White Folks Bay because literally everybody was white. And I'm not kidding. Like when I grew up, I did not know anybody who was not white, not a teacher, not a coach, not a neighbor, nobody. I mean, you go to the grocery store, nobody. It was this white enclave of upper middle class people. And I didn't even think about race because I never had to, right? I mean, it was just like a bunch of white people. And then I went to the University of Wisconsin in Madison for college, which attracts 50,000 students from literally all over the world, not just the United States. There were a lot of international students. And I'm living in the dorms, and it's like the United Nations.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not kidding. I was suddenly just immersed in this very diverse people that are on my floor in my dorm and throughout the dorm and on campus and stuff. And I thought, holy smokes, this is the coolest thing ever. I've never met all these interesting people I'm living with them, we're walking to class together, we're eating together in the cafeteria and stuff. And all of a sudden, the analogy that I use, Eric, is that scene in The Wizard of Oz where Dorothy's house lands in Oz or whatever, and she opens the door after the tornado, and the whole movie goes from black and white to color. Mm-hmm. That's exactly the feeling that I had. It was like this wondrous. I was like, where am I? What's going on? And I loved it. I loved it so much. It was just far more interesting than anything that I'd ever encountered. And I made friends, and I was I learned so much. And so that was my introduction to people not like you. And I didn't recoil from it at all. I leaned into it. And then later in life, when I started working with people who were very afraid of people who were not like them, I was like, this is not that hard. It's not that scary. Like, just talk to people. But then I realized that people don't know how to talk to people who are not like them. And from an HR standpoint, because I know that, that's your, stake in the ground, is today, people are afraid. They're so afraid of saying the wrong thing or having what they say taken the wrong way, that what I find is that they choose to say nothing. And I don't think that's good for business. First of all, we should always be able to talk to each other. But, it's really not that hard. People are people. There's so much more that brings us together than is actually the differences. But the differences, to me, it's what makes it cool and what makes it so much better. And business has proven that to be true. So that's my story.
I love it. I do think we need to shine the light on Wisconsin here for a second, because Ruby's married to a native Wisconsin.
What?
Wisconsinian.
What are they called? Wisconsinite? I don't
know. I'm sure somebody will correct us. So Ruby's a big Packer fan by marriage. So yes. Go Packers. And I do need to shine the light a little bit on, because I have a bunch of friends that went to Madison, and, Bucky Badger, he's a thing.
Oh, for sure. And I have to say, I was never really a Packer fan because I look hideous in green and yellow. So, if you're trying to look cute for the game, I definitely was better in red. For Madison,
so I'm guessing
I look jaundiced when I wear green. Yeah, I look like.
So I'm guessing you're pulling for the Chiefs this weekend in the Super Bowl.
I am. Yeah,
I love how the Chiefs have become like the villains of the NFL this year. It's so funny to me.
They're a spectacular team, though, and you can't discount that.
You can't. It's just
they've done the work. They've done the work.
It's just like the Brady Patriot dynasty. Yeah. I love to hate on them too.
I respect the effort. I respect the training. I respect the expertise and the work that goes into it. Whether you like them as a team or not, you don't get there by accident.
That's right. That's right. Well, I mean, tell us a little bit about writing books, right? So you've written 4, and we talked a little bit in the pre-show about how the publishing industry is no joke, right? It's not an easy ride. So you learned that with book 1, and you went back to the well 3 more times. Why?
Because This is going to sound like self-aggrandizing, so please don't hate me, people. But my first book became a business book bestseller. So that's all I write is business books. And not unlike any other bestseller or a very spectacularly successful movie, if they have Mission Impossible, they want Mission Impossible 2. And then, so when you have a best-selling book, your publisher comes back to you and goes, what else you got? And so that I never wanted to write a second book, but, and then I never wanted to write a third. And so all of my books have been bestsellers, and my publisher is Wiley, and I love them, and they've been wonderful to me, but it's a business for them. So if they've got a best-selling author who's cranking out good stuff relative to a unique niche like mine with people not like you, that clearly landed for people. Everybody's working with somebody not like them. So that's what it was. It wasn't like, gee, I really would love to just sit in a cabin in the woods and write books all day. I feel like if you're Stephen King or something, maybe. Yeah, but I actually have a job aside from books. I mean, I was a speaker for, 15 years before I ever wrote a book. So,
So your first book was How to Market to People Not Like You. And that set you on a path where you said you became known as the People Not Like You girl.
Right. That's my brand.
So your first couple of books were more focused on the customer end of the business spectrum.
Growing your business with people not like you.
Yeah. So this book is something that I think we can all relate to, and there it is. From a people leadership perspective, we all have our predilections, our preferences, our tendencies. We show up how we show up. But it's interesting, right? Like leading people and building relationships at work. Ruby and I say this all the time. Most people just navigate by feel. Yeah. Right? They just wing it.
And I would say the feel is unconscious. I mean, they're just going to go where they're comfortable, really.
Yeah.
So if you're the only woman in a team of guys, the guys aren't going to necessarily seek the woman out. They're going to hang with the guys, Right. If you're the only millennial and everybody else that you work with is a boomer, you're going to be wishing that there was another millennial there to go to lunch with. You don't want to go to lunch with your dad. So it's like, no, I'm not kidding. It's the most normal thing in the world, That's, in fact, I always tell my clients when they're talking about building a diverse team or whatever, and I say, when you start hiring people who are Gen Z and millennial, hire 2 at a time, because they need to have somebody up. Because they need to have somebody to go to lunch with. Otherwise, in 6 months, you're going to spend all this money training them, and they're going to leave.
Well, I wish you would have given that advice 20 some odd years ago when I started working in HR, where I was the token dude, the non-recruiter. There was always dudes in recruiting. Yeah. But in HR, it was me. It was it.
You're right. The HR world is very dominated by women. It's not unlike education. Like there's more female teachers than male teachers and stuff. Yeah. It's just interesting.
And then I had 2 daughters and I have a female cat, and it was just karmic payback. One of the gals. It's karmic payback for being a musician in a touring band for a while. I think that's God gets you back.
That makes you awesome now.
Well, so tell us a little bit about this book. What got you from the customer end, from growing your business to working with and leading people that are not like you? What pointed you in this direction? So
I have this. Do you ever have these moments? I've heard one time that most of us get 5 big days. Okay. And the 5 big days is days where you can remember where you were, who you were with, maybe what you were wearing, what background music was playing for either good or bad reasons, right? Maybe it's the day your kids were born. Maybe it's the day that you lost someone important to you, or, and heard that message, whatever it is. I have a big day that I'm never going to forget, where I was sitting in the Milwaukee airport. I had just done a speaking engagement for the Wisconsin Bankers Association, and I was flying to my next gig. Yeah, flying to my next gig, and I'm sitting there, and I've got 45 minutes at the gate or whatever, and I'm just thinking, I've got my first 2 books, How to Market People Not Like You, and then Customer Experience for People Not Like You. So that one was on the customer service side, right? My 86-year-old mother wants a different kind of customer experience than someone who's 20. She doesn't want to have to download your app. No, I'm not kidding. She doesn't, it's just different, right? So I had kind of done both, okay, from a marketing and sales standpoint, and then how do you serve the people that you've now attracted or whatever? And I was thinking, what else is there? There's got to be something else. And I was like, wait a minute. What about the people who are working together? What about the inside story? So I called my editor and I was just prepared to leave a voicemail. I mean, I've got just like 30 minutes before I'm going to board this plane or whatever. And he picks up. And I said, Richard, hey, I just 1 second, I just want to bounce something off you. And he goes, okay. And I said, I've got an idea for another book in this series called How to Work With and Lead People Not Like You. And he goes, I love it.
Make it happen.
Pretty much. Yeah. I mean, seriously, because I didn't have very long to talk. So we just kind of talked a little bit about it. And I was like, that's really where the real problem is the day in and day out. I mean, with a customer or from a marketing or sales standpoint, you have a very finite interaction, right? I'm working, I'm selling to you, or I'm serving you, and then you go away. Right. But day in and day out from a coworker standpoint, what if you just rub me the wrong way? What if we're oil and water and we don't get along or we don't see eye to eye? I still have to work with you. How does that happen? And he loved the idea, and that's how that one came about.
Oh, I love that. And, Ruby and I work together and we travel together. So, Ruby, I'm glad that I, like Johnny Gill, rub you the right way.
That sounds really pornographic, actually. I don't know.
It kind of is.
I'm giving myself a rim shot for that. You said rub me the wrong way, and I couldn't get Johnny Gill out of my head.
I'm never that phrase now in a business situation. I mean, you've ruined it for me, Eric.
Yes, value added.
But I would say, when Eric and I started working together, though, we were a little bit oil and water, having different preferences and styles.
Oil and water now sounds dirty to me too. So
I know, all the things. But we definitely had to navigate that. So it's probably with some of the things that you have in your work, and we teach DISC quite frequently, different preferences and tendencies, and we are like a dream team now that we've learned how to navigate that and actually, for lack of a better word, love one another for those differences and appreciate and know when to pull those in service of the world and the clients that we encounter.
Right. And that's actually been proven out in businesses, that there's study after study after study that shows that people who work with people who are not like them, I hate to use the word diversity because people tend to just kind of go to race, ethnicity, age, gender, things like that. And while that's important, day in and day out, that's not as important as someone like me, let's say, who's very outgoing, trying to work with an introvert, or, I'm an optimist and to work with a pessimist, or,
we call ourselves realists, Kelly, not pessimists.
There you
Sometimes.
go. or even just someone who's risk averse versus someone who is risk taking, any way that you can be different from me. An engineer thinks very differently than someone who's a graphic designer.
We talk a lot at my organization. It's a lot of innovation, a lot of future, what's possible kind of thing. And we talk about neural diversity, people who think differently. And not only on, whether that's an autism spectrum kind of neural diversity, or just I grew up rural in another country and you grew up city in the United States. Right. We have vastly different backgrounds and assumptions and experiences.
Yeah. And then all of our perspectives that were shaped by family and culture and things like that. So what I find is people are hungry for the exact words to say. This is what, no, I mean, they don't want theory. They're like, yeah, but what if I disagree with you? Literally, how can I say that without getting in trouble from an HR standpoint? But also moving the ball down the field and being respectful. But there is always in the back of their mind this whole what if I say the wrong thing, or Lori takes it the wrong way and reports me to HR and I didn't do anything, they're frozen, man. And I feel like that's so bad for business.
So in that same lane, why else is relating to people that are different like you hard?
Because the perspective that we have is our only perspective. I don't know your perspective until you share it with me and help me understand it. So all I know is what I know. And and so when we're different, here's what comes up first. The differences show up fast, right? And then the commonalities show up too, but not as fast.
Right.
And so that's why talking is so important and actually getting to know somebody, because I when we were chatting a little bit before we started here, it's just people are people. Generally we all want the same things. We all want a good job. We want to live in a safe neighborhood. We want the best for kids. We want the same things. And how we get there might differ, and the way that we got there differ, and what brings us to the table might differ, but that's where the gold is. I mean, social psychologists have studied this so intimately, and they have found that people, when they end up working with people who are not like them, they love going to work. They have reduced absenteeism. I mean, so aside from like productivity, sales, increase in customer service, customer employee retention, literally there's a reduction in employee absenteeism. People enjoy going to work more, so they don't call in sick as much. They don't blow off the work. I mean, it's been proven. And I just think what holds people back is, again, that initial fear of like, oh, I don't get you. Mm-hmm. You probably don't get me either. So I'm just going to stay in my lane over here and, hi in the hallways or, whatever. Good morning. Good morning. How are you? Good, good. Like all this superficial stuff that doesn't really yield anything.
Well, and I think people get in that waiting for somebody else to go first.
Totally.
Right. Or there's also kind of that insidious thing of assumption, right? That when somebody has this facial expression or reacts in this way or says or doesn't say a certain thing, we ascribe meaning to that, and then that becomes truth. And, we all get caught in that trap, as opposed to just being curious before judging somebody. Just, I wonder.
Did you just go Ted Lasso on me, Lori?
I did. Yes.
Well, and Lori, you hit on two things, which is nobody wants to go first, and then curiosity, right? So to me, you're right. Nobody wants to go first. Again, fear. But then the remedy for that is curiosity. And so one of the things that I teach people is when they don't know how to start a conversation with somebody, right? So there's somebody new in the break room, or somebody new, client-wise, whatever. Maybe they're from another country. Maybe, like I said, you're an engineer and they're in the marketing department or whatever. So when you don't know what to say, here's what I always do, because once again, if we can just start talking, it's going to be okay, is I say to people to say to somebody, tell me about yourself. And what I love about it is when you say, tell me about yourself, it lets the other person tell you what they think is important. So it's so much better than, where are you from? Which is, seriously, or like, what department are you in? I mean, just tell me about yourself. I've seen you in the hallway. We've never really talked. I'm Kelly. Tell me about yourself. And it's fascinating what people will tell you, because they will tell you I went to a conference one time and I'm at the cocktail party and I'm schmoozing with people I'm never going to see again. So it's pretty superficial. And I asked this woman, tell me about yourself. And she thought for a minute and she goes, I just moved from a condo to a condo. And I was like, all right, let's go there, and she cracked me up, and I was like, this is what she wanted to talk about. She had just moved from a condo she was renting to a condo that she bought, and she was funny and snarky and everything like that. And we were off to the races, and she was like half my age, and we ended up having this great time because I asked her that way,
Well, I mean, think about it, right? You got insight into who she was as a human being.
And her humor. And her, and it was a great conversation. And I was like, all right, let's go there. Tell me about the new condo,
Well,
and so
funny.
The point is, you never know what you're going to get when you ask it like that.
Yeah. It's funny. It makes me think of a story that I told in our book about a character that we called John the Pizza Guy. We did some work for an oil and gas company, and this guy was a leader of a team, of a division, and he worked in North Dakota, but lived in Houston. So he would come up and work what they called a hitch. He'd work 2 weeks, then go home for 2 weeks.
Yep.
So he's like, when I'm not working, I got nothing to do. Because I asked him, I said, he was regarded around the company as like one of the best leaders. People would run through walls for this guy. Yeah. And so I interviewed him for the book and I said, how do you get people to do this discretionary effort thing? They go the extra mile for you. And it's because of you. Like, how do you do that?
Right.
And he said, well, I'm a little different. And he's a big Texas guy with the drawl. He's like, I'm a little different than my guys here. I do things different. And I said, well, what do you do that's different? And he said, well, first off, I tell my people that I love them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow. I mean, these are field service oil and gas folks.
Right. Tough guys. Yeah. Not a lot of emotion is brought to them other than maybe slapping somebody on the back and say, you want to go get a beer?
That's right. That's right. So I said, wow, how does that go over? He's like, well, they don't believe me until they do. And I said, well, how do you go about developing these relationships? And much like the question that you just put on the table, Kelly, he said, when I'm not working, what I do is I get in my truck and I go to the pizza place and I get what he called a stack of pizzas. And then he would pick a site out in the field to go out to, and he would pull the cord. And what that means is you stop production, right? So he pulled the cord and everybody would come outside and he would put the pizzas on the tailgate of his truck. And he said, hey, I want to hang out here for the next hour and I want everybody to eat pizza and I want to talk. My only rule is we can't talk about work.
I love that. I love that.
So he told me, he's like, I learned who had kids and who was following what baseball team and who was a Chevy guy and who was a Ford guy. And right, like he learned all the things that something that you said, I think it was in the pre-show, Kelly, you're like, used to be, we'd walk around, we'd walk to meetings together, we'd go to lunch, we'd go to happy hour where we would do that, all that small talky stuff.
Right.
And now the workplace is different. It's harder. So how do we get ourselves into those situations, Kelly, where we can ask the question, tell me about yourself, when all I'm doing is bouncing from Zoom to Meet to Teams all day long?
Well, we talked about this a little bit. It has to be intentional. I mean, if you just click into your Zoom meeting and you go through the meeting, and there's always a little bit of chit chat at the beginning. And I've been thinking about this ever since COVID too, is I find it interesting that even the most structured organizations where it's like, there's always the chit chat. I think people almost can't do a meeting without chatting a little bit. Like, I mean, again, we're not robots, we're human beings. And I feel like in this era of disconnect, like we still, even if you work for a highly structured, very corporate organization or whatever, where they are meeting you to death, there's always that chit chat while we're waiting for maybe the one more person to join or something like that. And they'll be like, so what'd you have for lunch today, Lori? Oh my gosh. Wow. Can you send me that is the stuff that connects us. I mean, business gives us purpose and all that kind of stuff, but the stuff that connects us. And I think we've got to be intentional and work a little harder on that. And one of my clients actually did something really, really cool, which is they asked everybody to submit a family recipe, if there was one, or their favorite recipe, and they made an employee recipe book.
Oh, that's fun.
And I thought that was really cool because then what happened, they distributed it to everybody. They made this book. And then people would say, Ruby, my gosh, that apple pie that you had in there, I tried that. Now, so like, wait a minute, is that your recipe? Did you make that up? And then Ruby would say, oh no, that was my great grandmother's. And we used to have it on my birthday. And all of a sudden you're like learning these things that make us feel connected and stuff, but it does have to be intentional. I think organizations can help with that.
Yeah. To be clear, Ruby would have said, that's my husband's recipe. He made the pie.
That's what I was thinking.
Ain't no cooking there.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's funny, you talked about regimented organizations, and we have a client who's an engineering centric company. Mm-hmm. And we were talking to them about this very problem, like 3 years ago. And some of the research that came out of the book, we were talking with the COO, and he said, so what I'm hearing you say is that I need to put 3 minutes of banter at the beginning of my meeting, right? engineer. And so he did it because he's kind of a goofy guy and he's super relatable. So on the agenda for his staff meeting, he put 3 minutes of banter as the number one agenda item.
Yeah.
It took off through the organization. It became known. Everybody started their meetings with Mark's 3 minutes of banter.
Yeah, it became a norm.
But see, and again, there's humor in that, but there's also like, this is awesome. And everybody became an owner of that.
Right. Right.
That's a great story. Great story.
Yeah. Yeah. We shifted. So when COVID started, we started doing every Friday, coffee with Phil, who's our CEO, so that everybody could see each other. And a lot of it was just literally wellness checks. Is everybody okay? Is everybody right? You know,
who's losing their stuff. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, exactly. And, so it was just kind of a comfort thing to be able to see each other and interact in that way. And it didn't have to be about business. There was no agenda. It wasn't recorded. It was optional, all of that. Then that, that we didn't need it every week as time went on.
Right.
But it's been kind of a legacy thing that in the last year has been like it used to be, every 2 weeks, and then it was once a month and that sort of thing. And, but there was this, it had oozed into talking a lot about businessy stuff. And so then people were like, well, I don't know if it's optional because what if I miss stuff and it's not recorded and then I didn't hear about it? Or what if I consistently don't show up and somebody notices that I'm not showing up? Am I going to be judged?
Mark next to my name now.
Right. Which is zero. Nobody was doing that, but still people wonder, like,
of course they do.
Or like my boss is there, so I feel like I have to be there, whatever.
Optics.
Yeah. So in the vein of the 3 minutes of banter, right, that need for scheduled, unstructured time, right?
Yes.
So we've shifted, and now we're doing, we took coffee with Phil out of it because and he said, he's like, take me out of it. Don't make it be a CEO thing. Because then there's this obligation of like, well, Phil's there, so I should probably be there. Yeah, and he was like, take me out of it. And so now it's just coffee break, and we're doing it quarterly, and we're rotating the hosting of it, and it's purely social. No business, no news, no updates. Right. And so I get to be the host of the first one on Friday.
Tell him.
And so this stems from a real thing that we do all the time, and especially with Ruby and Rick when we're out, her husband Rick, and it's called Name the Artist, Name That Artist. And so you start playing a song, and the first one to name the artist wins 1,000,000 points or whatever, right?
If Ruby does it, it's 1,000,000 points apparently.
What do you get for your points?
Bragging rights.
Bragging rights.
Really nothing. But then you don't listen to the rest of the song. You go on to the next song, right? So it's like just moving through, and so that is going to be coffee break is a game of Name That Artist. So
I love that.
90 songs in a playlist, and we're just gonna, decades starting in the 60s to try to get all the generations in there. So I'm excited to see who shows up.
Yes.
Music is one of those things where people are like, oh my gosh, I haven't heard this song in so long, or whatever. It takes them back to the 80s, the 90s, whatever.
Yes.
So that's a great idea. I had a client that was going through a transition, a somewhat difficult transition at their company, and they have a mid-sized company. It was like 60 employees, and what they started to do, which was very smart on their part, was to have these Friday afternoon town halls. Okay. And so they brought some bar stools into, the break room or whatever it was, their conference room, and they would get chips and guac and, salsa and some munchies and all this kind of stuff. And the idea was, let's talk about the transition or whatever that was going on in the company that people were scared about, or maybe rumors were flying, and they would have a chance to address that and stuff. Well, they got through that, and it became this every Friday afternoon. And of course, nobody's working on anything after about 2:30 on a Friday.
Right.
So it's like, let's turn this into something that is productive, because everybody else is just sitting there watching the clock and wondering when they can slip out the door. And what it morphed into naturally, organically, was once they got through whatever the issues were with this transition, it just morphed into a social hour.
Right.
And nobody wanted to go home. They wanted to hang out on a Friday afternoon for the, and so the executive team still came, and it became a what I call an ask me anything. Yeah. And it wasn't even formal at that point. They'd be talking about, so who do you think's going to win the Super Bowl? You know, but it was that incredible social time, and people, even though there was no agenda, there was no reason to meet, they still wanted to meet.
Yeah.
And I find that very powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I love that. So Kelly, when we're trying to work with and lead people that are not like us, what happens when we either perceive or we know that we don't agree on stuff, or we don't see eye to eye on certain topics? How do we step into that dance?
Yep, I'm going to give you the do, but first I'm going to give you the don't.
Okay.
So I feel strongly that if you give somebody a don't, you have to give them a do. But I was raised to be very polite, and my parents drilled manners into us when we were growing up. And we were taught that when we don't agree with someone, we were to say the words, let's agree to disagree. And those are very polite words. The problem is in business, they don't work, because I'll just take you, Ruby. If I say, Ruby, let's agree to disagree, and Ruby says, fine, then this
Ruby would say, fuck you.
But also, this conversation is over. We just agreed to just, and so it ends. And I feel like, holy smokes, that's the last thing that we want, is when we don't agree, we should keep talking, not end it. So I tell people to eradicate those words, that phrase, out of their vocabulary. Stop saying agree to disagree, because it's a dead end. It's a conversation ender. And say instead, I see it differently. I see it differently is not antagonistic. I'm not saying I'm right and you're wrong. And I'm not even trying to persuade you over to my point of view. It's a simple declarative statement of just, I see it differently. And what I promise you that'll happen every time is, again, play along with me, Ruby. You know, if I say to Ruby, I see it differently, she's going to say, well, tell me how you see it. And we're getting further down the road. Now, we might still ultimately not agree, but we're going to know more about what we both think and what the valuable exchange is there about how do you see it. There might be something I'm missing. Yeah. And so agree to disagree to me is very judgmental. And it's also just like, I don't care what you think or why you think that. It's just, let's agree to disagree.
Yeah. Agree to disagree is intended to end the conversation. I think we're done here. Yeah.
Correct. And so, and just again, maybe in your personal life you could do that, but at business, that's a terrible thing to do. And so I see it differently, moves that ball down the field. And ultimately, it fosters understanding. If it doesn't foster a conclusion, or if it doesn't foster consensus, it fosters a better, broader perspective of, okay, well, I still have a different perspective, but now at least I understand yours and where you're coming.
And I think somebody said this to me once, and it rang so true, that I feel like people want to be heard more than they want to be right.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Like if you can just acknowledge that I do have a perspective and that I do have feelings about something, or I do have a different angle on this, at least if you acknowledge that, I'm willing to then step into a conversation with you. If I'm denied that acknowledgement, then
you present it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Did you go Ross?
Yeah.
So that's so my first phrase that I offered up was, tell me about yourself. Mm-hmm. It lets the other person choose what they think is important to share. And then that one is, I see it differently. Mm-hmm. And then another one that is very, very important is when you need help from someone else, which we all do, somebody's got some information that you need, or, whatever. Don't stop saying, can you help me? Because can you help me is a yes or a no question, and you can get a no. And you will get a no, or at least an incredibly qualified, I got to get these numbers to Eric by 3, because you know how he gets when he doesn't get the numbers in time. Like, I would, but I could. To me, it's like the person when you were in college who would call you up on a Saturday or whatever and say, hey, or Friday, and say, what are you doing tomorrow? And I'd say, no plans. What do you have in mind? Let's do something. And they'll be like, want to help me move?
Want to help me move? I knew you were going to say that.
Trapped, right? So we're the natural inclination is to be reluctant to agree to do something. Yeah, when I don't know what I'm agreeing to. So the better way, because you're going to get a no far more than you're going to get sure, is to say, I need your help. I need your help are 4 magic words that will open doors for you like you would not believe. Because if I say to you, let's just role play here, Eric, I need your help. You say,
oh, I feel like a really smart person. How can I help you, Kelly?
There you go.
What do you need?
What's going on? What do you need? What's going on? How can I help? So the reason that this works, and it will work every single time, I will give your listeners $1 million each if it doesn't work. And it will work every time because it's anthropological. As Homo sapiens, we are designed to actually help each other. That's how we've survived all these, years. So when we say to another person, I need your help, there's several things that are going on. Number one, we're honoring them. You've got something I don't have. You've got information, experience, contacts, whatever. And also, I need your help. And since we're hardwired, the other person is, I didn't ask a yes or no question. I simply made a declarative statement of, I need your help. And that other person is going to lean into that and go, what do you need? What's going on? How can I help? Whatever. And if they're not the person who can help me, let's say I ask Eric, you that, and I need some information, and you don't have that information anymore. That's not in your department anymore. You say, you know what? Lori is the person who has that now. But you know what? Let me get her on the phone and text her and tell her that all of a sudden you're like, helping me.
Yeah.
I need your help will never let you down. And you know what? People like to help. It feels good. It feels good to help somebody solve a problem. We just don't want to be trapped.
Well, and you're putting the requester puts themselves in the more subservient position, right?
Absolutely.
Can you help me? Is like a power grab. It's a dominance play. I need your help is sort of
exactly. It's honoring somebody. And the other thing that's I think really important, and I don't mean to be sexist in any way, but I hear this more from women, is I've had some women at conferences when we talk about this, they'll say at the corporate culture that I work at, if I as a woman say I need help, that makes me look bad, And I said, no, I didn't say I need help. The phrase is, I need your help. Because I need help does sound like you're in over your head and you can't do whatever it is you're trying to do. But if I say, hey, I need your help, I'm doing this, and I was told that you actually have more experience on this than anybody else. I need your help. Can I pick your brain for 10 minutes?
Right. Totally different.
Totally different. So don't say, I need help. The magic phrase is, I need your help.
I need your help. I love that. It's funny to me. It made me think about some of these phrases that we go to that are dead ends. Like when you were talking about earlier, it made me think of, with all due respect.
Which just means I'm about to insult you.
I'm about to insult you.
There's no respect following
There's no respect at all.
Or don't take this the wrong way.
Yeah, don't take this the wrong way, but you're an idiot. Right? I mean, so we have these sort of phrases that we go to, and to those examples, not all the time helpful. One of the phrases that I go to that I love, especially when I start to find myself getting hijacked because we are disagreeing, it is tense. The temperature in the room is rising.
Right.
One of the things that I like to go to is 2 words, and it's just say more. Because if I ask you to say more, you will. And I don't have, and then I don't have to talk, and I can take that time to take my temperature down just a smidge.
I love that. I'm stealing that.
Take it free of charge.
Say more.
I stole it from somebody else. It's not mine.
No, but you know what? I mean, a lot of really effective CEOs do that in one way or another, where you'll be talking to somebody, and one of their colleagues or whatever, and they'll be like, "Tell me more. Tell me more about that." Yeah.
It's also a super good interviewing technique when somebody gives too short of an answer. Say more about that.
Say more about that. Well, and for me, I mean, it was the way that I could give myself space to breathe.
Right. It's doing 2 things for you. One is this person is actually going to tell you more, which is always going to be beneficial. But 2, you're buying time. Just
correct.
Yeah.
Well, and it puts you in that curiosity mindset versus I need to defend and be right. So
we need a quick answer here, and there's no time for real dialogue. You know, like, what do you think about that? Yeah, good. Okay, great. Done. You know, whereas say more. Why do you like it? You know, or don't like it or whatever.
Do you have any other little tips, tricks, do's, don'ts, catchphrases, things that we can rely on when we find ourselves in sticky situations? Yes.
So I'm going to go with a do and a don't. And this is a huge do, a huge don't. This is like, this is really important. These are 2 words to eradicate from your vocabulary from right now for the rest of your life, and teach your kids to never say these words again. And these words are, the 2 words are you people or those people.
Oh God.
Okay. Even when it's wrapped in a compliment. Okay. So I have heard people say
that's a backhanded compliment.
Well, it's not intended that way. It's still it's intended to be a compliment. But what you do when you say you people or those people is you're creating that otherness, right?
Yeah.
You're not like the rest of us, right? So I heard a woman one time who was working with somebody from a different culture, and she said, I just love how you people are so faith and family oriented. So it's a compliment, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. However, so that's the don't. And I don't believe you can give somebody a don't without giving them a do. We are curious about other cultures. Okay. So the don't would be, don't say, what do you people eat for Hanukkah? Okay. Don't do that. You people. But if you're curious about what people eat for Hanukkah, that's a legit question, and say it like this. What are the traditional foods served at Hanukkah, and how does your family like to celebrate the holiday? There's a way to ask anything. You just cannot say you people or those people. So that's a really big one. And I mean, I've definitely had audiences kind of be like, you know, take a picture of the slide or write it down or whatever. And because they get it, when you say it, it lands so hard. You know, what do you people eat for Hanukkah? You know?
that makes me
how
think
do you people get through Ramadan? You know, I mean, how do you people do that? You know, it's like, oh my gosh, it's so rude. Ruby's losing her mind over here. Yeah.
Well, it's almost like the Texas bless her heart, right? It's
yes.
Like you don't really mean bless her heart.
No, right. You're just trying. But again, I try to think that people have the best of intentions. They're just clunky. Right. Yeah. And so that's why this book, and when I talk about it on stage, that's why I've actually really gravitated to, let me give you the script. Let me give you the script, because you don't know what to say. So I promise you're either going to say nothing, which I'm not a fan of. We talked about that. Or you're going to say something that's really going to come out wrong. Here's another one. This has nothing to do with people not like you, really. It has to do with empathy. And, you know, sympathy is feeling sorry for somebody, right? Empathy is feeling with somebody, right? So, you know, the example that I always give is your coworker's house floods, and she has to move in with her in-laws with her 3 kids and her 2 dogs and her spouse. Okay, right, with her in-laws, right? So the sympathetic response would be like, oh my gosh, wow, that sucks. The empathetic response would be, you must feel so displaced and stressed out. That's got to be so overwhelming, right? Like trying to put yourself in. So here's 2 more words to eradicate from your vocabulary forever. And those 2 words are at least.
Oh, yes. There's a Brene Brown video about this one.
It's so true. It's so true. I mean, you know, I usually use a whole list when I'm doing this on stage or whatever, a PowerPoint slide that has like, here's some examples from my real life where my friends have told me this, whatever, where guy lost his job and one of his friends was like, well, at least your wife still works, you know?
Yeah,
okay,
thanks.
So like, ouch, really?
Yeah.
Or a friend of mine got divorced and she's, you know, in her early 60s, and another friend of hers said, well, at least you're still cute. You can find somebody else.
Oh,
16 years of marriage. Just here's the worst one. Are you ready? This one's going to make your eyes roll back in your head, and it's the cringe factor. I'm just trying to brace your audience.
Yeah, lay it on us.
A friend of mine had a miscarriage, and one person said to her, well, at least you know you can get pregnant. And another person said, are you ready? No, really. You ready? I had a miscarriage, she said. And the other person said, well, at least you won't have to pay for college.
Wow. Oh, no. That is a dick move right there.
It's a total dick move, but also it's like, and I don't know whether people don't know what to say in those moments, and they say, or whether they're trying to put a positive spin on.
I think people try to do the silver lining thing.
That's not what that person needs in that moment. All they need is some compassion and saying something like, I can't even imagine how tough this must be. I'm here for you if you want to talk. That's all you got to say.
That's all you got to say.
Exactly. Yeah, but at least you can get pregnant. At least you don't have to pay for college. I mean, I was just like, my
nice
heart
try,
hurts.
Swing and a miss.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just stop saying you people and those people. Stop saying at least. The minute you say the word at least, you are not in empathy mode. You are in clunky mode.
Yeah.
You're in danger mode, really.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, I had another friend who had to put her dog down. She had 2 dogs. And if you've ever had to put an animal down, it's the most heart-wrenching thing in the world. I mean, it'll tear you apart. And so, she went to work and, told somebody that she had a terrible weekend because she had to put her dog down. And this woman knew that she had another dog. And she goes, well, at least you still have Skippy, and it's like, did you not just
hear?
Yeah,
yes, exactly.
Did you not hear that my heart is breaking? And
right. So, well, and it's people assuaging their own discomfort. It's hard for people to hold space for someone that's in pain, right? It's hard to just be present with somebody that is expressing an emotion, or they're crying, or they're whatever, and people just want to make it end. Well, at least you have another dog. Okay, let's go. Right? Yeah.
And sometimes I think it can be uncomfortable, but we don't have to fill that void with words. Sometimes you can just hold somebody's hand and just say, "Talk to me."
Yeah. Or just say, "I am so sorry."
Say nothing and just, "I'm here. I'm here with you."
I'm here with you. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I hope that's been helpful to your audience. I mean,
super helpful. Ruby, I want to make sure that you have opportunity to ask questions because Lori and I have been peppering him in there.
Yeah, I was actually thinking I have a question for you. I was talking to a friend this past week, and she ended up being in tears, and she was talking about the environment that she's in. She's a woman in a technology organization where there are not a lot of women. And she doesn't feel heard or seen, and thinks now she's writing stories like I could be laid off, all these, it's very visceral. She's thinking about it all the time. And so thinking about kind of the self-care, self-advocacy from her standpoint, are there any phrases that she can use or
to tell herself?
Like a baby step to ask for what she needs? Because I think that's a very overwhelming situation, but is there like a micro step or a baby step to start signaling that she needs something different or to ask for something different? Does that make sense?
It does.
Would you suggest a different path?
Well, are you talking about asking for a friend to talk to or asking a coworker? I mean, it's a different environment,
Yeah, it's true. So maybe I'm thinking about, let's think about her and her manager to start.
Okay.
I would say.
What I would say is I would just be honest if there's a good relationship with the manager, and I would just be honest and say, I just want to share something because I feel a little off these days, and I want to tell you why I'm going through something right now or whatever. And if I seem a little off, I'm going to be fine eventually. But right now I'm actually just kind of trudging through some awfulness or some difficulty or whatever, because that's going to help a manager see that situation in another light where they're like, okay, Ruby just said that she's off. She knows she's off. I don't need to tell her she's off. So it affects your performance or your attention or your focus or something like that. You're sending a flag, which is, hey, I'm going through something right here. If you have an empathetic manager, maybe that person will actually, talk to you and help you. Even if they're not, even if they're very, cold or something, you've sent a pretty clear signal. You've just set off a firework that just said, I know I'm struggling. I just want you to know that I'm going through something. I'm going to get through it. And I just want to let you know I'm a little off right now. So if I come across a little distracted or something, I just want you to know why. And I'm aware, and I'm plugging away. Because if I was a manager, that would tell me a lot about that person, and in a good way.
And if it's a pattern, like if she can pick a pattern, like I feel X after these things happen, and these things happen all the time.
Yeah.
I'm getting interrupted. I'm
like what is it behaviorally, or what's
what's the do and say that somebody's doing? And then you can do the intention versus impact thing. Like, hey, I'm sure it's not your intention, but I've noticed I get cut off a lot when we're trying to brainstorm, and I haven't been able to really express all of my, ideas. And it's been really hard for me. So I just wanted to mention it.
Love that. That's a really good example too.
Yeah.
All right, Kelly, we promised to get you out of here a few minutes early because you've got to drive across town at rush hour in Denver. So before we let you go, let us know, how do we find you on the worldwide interwebs? How do we learn more? And where do we get your books?
You can get my books anywhere that books are sold, obviously online at the big ones like Amazon and Barnes & Noble, but you can also get them at any independent bookseller. And I do love our independent booksellers because, they're independent. And
Porchlight, baby. Porchlight.
Yes. And Porchlight. Yeah, absolutely. Porchlight is actually our fulfillment place. But they're wonderful. But also the mom and pops. I mean, here in Denver, we have the Tattered Cover and,
Kinda.
Anyway, but, the independent booksellers are the backbone as well. So that's available. And then if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, that's probably where I'm most prolific. I'm Kelly C as in cat. It's Kelly C McDonald. So my middle name is Christine. If you put in Kelly McDonald, there are 20 million Kelly McDonalds. It's a very common Irish name. And if you can't remember the C, then just put in Kelly McDonald Denver, and you're going to see this exact same picture come up. So
awesome.
That's me. Yeah, so that's probably the way. And my website, my corporate website is mcdonaldmarketing.com, not McDonald's marketing.
No hamburglers involved here.
I can't tell you how many times I've gotten emails from people who are telling me that and I'm not kidding because you can't make this up, I have an idea for you, the McTrout. Not kidding. I have an idea. I have an idea for you, the McLiver. They think that I am McDonald's marketing. I'm not.
McLiver.
I love this so much.
McLiver sandwich.
Kelly, there's a coffee table book in that.
There is. And it always blows my mind because they're on my website and emailing me through my website. I'm like, do you see any open arches on this website anywhere? No, you see a speaker on stage that has nothing to do with burgers. What are you doing, people? How drunk are you? I know we're on the Corporate Bartender, so we have to end with that.
That's right. Kelly, thank you so much for being here with us today. This has been fantastic. We're gonna shift into our end of show ritual, and we're gonna send Kelly off into rush hour traffic. Thank you so much, Kelly. We will see you soon. Take care.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
See ya.
Today's funny things. So today's funny thing number one. So our dog just brought the sprinkler in through his doggy door. How's your day going?
Oh my gosh.
Literally, the sprinkler is in the house.
Running.
Good.
That's amazing.
This one references I don't know if it was Saturday or Sunday. I went to go write somewhere, and it didn't work out so well. Do you ever get pre-annoyed, like you already know someone is about to piss you off?
Yes.
Mr. Positivity.
Number 34 on my Clifton strengths.
We're like, we know.
Strengths. Yeah. This one's about language, and it made me laugh. Polish is a beautiful language. We need a slur for toddlers. In Polish, we have goniaki, which roughly translates to shitlings.
Wow.
Other countries have ways to say shitty things about children, which I thought was lovely. being kissed in your sleep is like the purest form of love, unless you're home alone or in prison.
Prison.
Gross. It's really dark.
Yep.
Reminds me of Jeff's joke.
Yeah.
You smell different when you're awake. This one is just stupid and it made me laugh. It's called Early Worm Gets the Bird. And the worm is wrapped around the bird's neck and two other worms are going, fuck him up, Gary. Oh, but my favorite funny thing today. My favorite funny thing today. She's not wrong, but did she have to say it? It's a card from a game called For the Girls, and it said, do the dare to keep this card. Text another player's parent and tell them that their child is being a terrible influence on you. And so the next screen is the text, your child is being a terrible influence on me. And the woman said, sweetheart, you two met because you were the only two girls left at a frat house in Ohio at 7 a.m. What did you expect? That's so relatable to people that have kids in college. I would do a good feel story today, but it didn't paste in, so I'm skipping straight to the cocktail. And today's semi-quarantine cocktail is bad motor farthing. Penny farthings are those bikes from where guys who have mustaches with the tips like I have right now, with the big wheel in the front and the tiny wheel in the back, they're called penny farthings. So this is a riff on the penny farthing cocktail. You need a little bit of gin, one Yamaha R6, half ounce of Averna. 750 hours this guy put into building this machine that you see here. A little Luxardo, hundreds of pounds of steel, a dash of orange bitters, and this thing that you see on your screen that looks like a motorized droid penny farthing. He built this motorcycle with the giant front wheel. He had to build, you see the little, there are little like suspension wheels to hold it upright. In his original design, those retracted when he would drive away. But he said, this cracked me up. He said, yeah, that's like a time release suicide right there. So he took the retractable mechanism off and left him down. It steers with buttons. Hydraulic mechanisms turn that giant front wheel because it can go 140 miles an hour.
That looks terrible.
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
I don't think I would go 10 miles an hour on that one.
No.
Oh, boy.
Holding a parasol.
Oh, that was awesome. Thank you for being here today. Thanks to Kelly McDonald. Thanks to Ruby and Lori for dancing us out. Gratitude for everybody that's listening to this right now. Go have some dinner, and we will see you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you so much for joining us today. If you had a good time and learned a thing or two at today's happy hour, please share it with your friends. If you want to join our tribe, head on over to skyeteam.cloud/TCB or email us at info@skyeteam.com. That's SKYE team.com. Thanks again, and remember, you've always got friends at the Corporate Bartender.